Hey everybody, here we are with your worship Mayor Al McDonald and Scott Clark. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Really good.
You're both
Awesome.
looking great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I recognize that set behind you.
Yeah. I thought I would change it up slightly. It's always good to have some fun. Al, thank you so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate it. Scott, the same. Nice to have you guys here. Al, I just wanted to ask a few questions. We're in COVID, of course. We're in North Bay. From your chair, what are you seeing in these changing times?
Well, people are scared. They're worried. They're concerned people aren't following the protocols. They're afraid people are coming up from the south. They're afraid their neighbors might be going south and coming back. They're concerned about the economy, but I would say more concerned about their safety. Mental health is starting to become a big issue. I'm starting to hear that quite a bit. But it's amazing to see how innovative our businesses are starting to become, especially with that curbside. I mean, we could pick any of the big retailers. They're doing a tremendous job protecting their customers. I think when people don't physical distance or they see crowds out, that's the message that's coming back to me. And when I was out on Saturday, now I get Mother's Day is probably the biggest day of the year, probably bigger than Christmas, to be honest. I'll say I was shocked at how many cars I saw out there. It was like a regular Saturday. And we're a little concerned about the long weekend. We're looking at different things. But I would say, Paul, Scott, I would say people are concerned about their safety and their family safety.
Yeah, good.
I would have thought, Al, that the biggest thing would have been about business. I know that's a huge part of with economic development. So that's a little bit surprising, but not. The one thing I want to get your reaction on, being a business owner, I've had so much feedback, support, and contact with your economic development department. I'm really impressed by that. And I'm a small guy, and they've been on an ongoing basis reaching out to me, connecting with me, seeing how it's going, asking if I need support. There's been a couple of times I've reached out to them, and they're working with me on growth opportunities. So I just wanted to, I'm just really impressed how economic development has stepped up and is connecting with business.
Yeah, I think to your point, when Paul had asked me about most of the messages I'm getting, if there's 2,000 businesses in North Bay and there's 52,000 citizens, you can imagine most of it is non-business people that are reaching out. That's not to say business people haven't reached out, but it's the vast majority are not business people. So it's kind of the perspective I get. Would I say the economy is important? Yeah, the people in the business world are hurting. The retailers are devastated, the restaurants, the bars, but they're being innovative as well. But there's no question that our staff, they're amazing, Scott. Thank you for recognizing them. Erin, her team, Bev in planning and building, and Ian. I will say that we're doing everything we can for economic recovery readiness and trying to work with our community partners and our local businesses to make sure that they're ready too. Our engineering department, our building department, our planning department, our economic development department, they're fully staffed. They're all focused on recovery. Any subdivisions that come in, any building permits, we're processing them. Our DART team is working. We set up the business hotline. We partnered with the labor market group, Stately Fiddler, to do the survey of employees. We're working with the mining sector. I've reached out to our community partners. I've reached out to the base, your past honorary colonel, Scott. So I reached out to them, the ONTC, the mining sector. So I'm reaching out to these bigger groups every day just to see what they're doing. We are saying to our business sector, hey, let's be ready when the the light switch goes on or we get the green light, we will have all our capital projects shovel ready so that when we get the go ahead, they'll go. Because if you look at how governments around the world work, or even provincial governments here in Ontario, if you really want to get everybody working, you start this stimulus programs in the sense of infrastructure projects. So we want to make sure that we're ready to go. Some of the projects can move forward, some can't, but we're going to make sure that they're all ready to go if we do get that light.
That's awesome. Al, there's a lot of frontline workers that deserve praise. Who do you think out there that needs some recognition at this point? I mean, the city's doing an incredible job. There's so many people out there doing all kinds of awesome things. Can you think of any departments, anybody?
Oh, that's, I know if you say 5 groups, you forget 2 groups, and then you hear loud and clear. I would think when we say frontline workers, it's the grocery clerks, the people at the beer store, the liquor store, the mechanics. We talk about our medical professionals. It could be doctors, nurses, respiratory techs, everybody that works at the hospital, PSWs, EMS, fire, police. Even fire and police are going out doing birthday parties, which I think is just fabulous. Trying to help families out. I know I hear from telehealth nurses. They tell me the trends that they're hearing so that we can kind of shift our message a bit, because they're getting a lot of messaging. What about, I would say the one sector that maybe doesn't get any recognition or any support would be those working in mental health and addictions, and the homeless sector. I feel for them. I mean, they're doing everything they can. It's a very challenging environment. You just have to read in the media the challenges that they're facing. So I would think that group doesn't get enough recognition. I feel bad for the people in the grocery stores, because you can imagine being cooped up to your house. Sometimes people aren't so nice when they go out. But Paul, I think just to be on the safe side, all frontline workers deserve our greatest respect. And I mean, this week is Nurses Week, so we're recognizing them, but we really say frontline workers, and that's everyone across the board. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody has a role to play.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Speaking of roles, Al, like Paul and I were talking before this call that you've been the mayor for some time, you've been on council, you've been our MPP. So there's often a cadence that happens, right? So every year, like in September, you start working on the budget, and then the budget's going to be 8%, and everybody goes, oh, and then, and then it comes back down again. And, there's this cadence that happens at certain times. This has thrown off all the cadence. What have you seen just from the City Hall staff, your counselors, how everything you have to stop everything, that cadence, though it still has to continue budgeting and things like that. And what are you seeing now about performance and how everybody's working together and adapting, because you have no choice but adapting so quickly?
Oh, yeah, no, it's upside down, really, to be honest. I used to always say, just before I get into some of the details, the one weekend that we had off as an MP or an MPP or as a mayor or councillors, the one weekend where there was no duties whatsoever was May Long weekend, which is next week. And I think that's because everybody was getting their yards ready or getting their cottages ready. So it was the one weekend where we knew that no one wanted to do anything, and you could actually rake your yard or cut your grass for the first time. From a city perspective, our staff have been phenomenal. Our unions have been great to deal with. They're working with us. We've changed their shifts around. So they're working 24/7, 7 days a week, because we need to physical distance them. We can't have them in the same truck together. They've been phenomenal. Unfortunately, we had to lay off about 80 casual and part-time workers. We're not going to hire students this year just because we're watching our budget. And we put a hiring freeze on, just, we're trying to be prudent with the taxpayers' money. So by and large, that is working really well. As I maybe was off air, so I apologize, because sometimes we do talk a lot before we go on air. You know, our engineering department, our economic development department, our planning, building, they're all at work. We're really focused on that area. If you look around the city, I don't think it's ever been so clean. And Harriet Madigan and her group are doing a great job too, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But our crews are out there, they're doing everything they can. The sand is being picked up earlier than ever. Our parks are being raked and cut. Even our spare bus drivers are in City Hall in the arenas doing deep cleans. That's how unbelievable our staff have been throughout all of this. We have staff members delivering groceries for seniors. We have our economic development department answering business hotlines. We have our customer service answering our citizens hotline. Everybody is pitching in. It's unbelievable to see the spirit and resolve our staff have, and in turn our community. Harriet Madigan and her group, they're out there, and you see them all over social media cleaning up. You see the citizens understanding that, you know, things are going to take a little bit longer than they have in the past. You can only imagine what that conversation was like on that first day when I was talking to the CEO and said, we have to close City Hall. You know, how do you close City Hall? How do you send people home? And this is like the first day that it really starts to happen. But the city of North Bay was incredible leadership by everybody in the city. It's not just City Hall. City staff, council, they're all engaged, but our community partners too, medical officer, health, our hospital, our fire chief, our police chief, you know, mental health, everyone is pitching in and doing their part. And our community should really have confidence in all those community leaders because they're standing up and doing what they need to do.
That's awesome. We've spoke to a lot of business owners over the last little bit, and I tell you, there are some incredible businesses here in North Bay. Many of them, well, a good handful of them have pivoted their business from their current manufacturing processes over to the PPE gear, and they're doing extremely well with it. Another question, I know you're following the Fed and the provincial guidelines for reopening. What does that look like for us here in the Bay?
So we're a creature of the province, so we're going to follow whatever the province wants us to do. I'll be honest, I think they're doing a tremendous job. I think all levels of government are doing a tremendous job. I think when you say open up the economy, people get nervous. But if businesses can put in the protocols that they need to keep their customers safe, I think there'll be confidence, and our businesses have been doing an outstanding job. I mean, not to pick one, but you go up by Canadian Tire and they have their curbside pickup. I mean, that's like military precision. They just pull up, they throw it in your trunk. You know, Wendy and I had to go pick up some dog food. You pull up in front of the store, they throw it in your trunk, and you drive away. So if you really think of, I always go back to my consumer distributing days, and I know I'm really dating myself, where you just put an order in and then out it comes. You don't go shopping. If you look at grocery stores, you know, the online orders, you just drive up, you throw it in your trunk and drive away. That's the kind of shopping I could do, to be honest. To go through stores is really more Wendy's area. But I think our businesses have really stepped up. Look at New Ontario Brewery. I mean, they've gone from, they still make beer, but they're doing hand sanitizer. Some of our local manufacturers have got into the mass. But I think that really speaks to how innovative our business owners are. And I, you know, shout out to the Chamber of Commerce. We have the third largest chamber by membership in Ontario, and we're 52,000 people. So you can see that we're very business friendly, open for investment, but our community leaders and our business leaders, such as yourselves, I really get it. And it's really just speaking positively, making sure that people have confidence in the ability of our business leaders and our community leaders. And we will get through this, but our business leaders are second to none. And now the younger generation's coming through, and I think if we can just mentor them or assist them whatever way we can, we'll be in pretty good hands.
I have to say that when you said earlier on about things are going to change going forward, we're seeing it, how we conduct meetings, how we engage with clients, how we demonstrate and work through different challenges. I have to say, I actually enjoyed the last council meeting when it was done on Zoom. I don't know what kind of feedback you got from it. I'm sure it'll go back to how it was always been done. But I actually enjoyed the Zoom call. I could see everybody's face. I could see them reacting to anything. I actually enjoyed how it was being done from that perspective. I don't know if there's been any talk about what's going to happen in the future, but I enjoyed it.
So the Zoom meetings are going very well, and council's been awesome. They really have. They're engaged. They took steps right at the very beginning of this pandemic to make sure that everything was set in motion, including some of the motions to allow our staff to make some of the decisions moving forward. I always say to the odd counselor, now you know what it feels like when everybody's looking strictly at you and not at 11 people. And you always have to be paying attention and watching your facial expressions and making sure that, you're listening. They always do, but when you're sitting there for hours, it's hard to keep your full attention all the time. But yeah, so when I look at Zoom, I can see everybody, and I can see their faces and their expressions if they agree with something or don't agree with something. And I think that really, for anybody that tunes in, that really gives you the impression of how people are really thinking, right? Somebody says something, you kind of go, yeah, well, I don't know about that. You're front and center. You see it. So it's almost having that poker face, but council's been tremendous.
Yeah. And
by the way, Scott, just so you know, so we can only do these virtual meetings while the provincial state of emergency is in place. The minute it's not in place, if they cancel that state of emergency, we have to go back to the regular way we do business. And so we're kind of going, if they cancel the state of emergency but don't cancel the group gatherings of 6 or more, we might have to change our procedural bylaw again. So everything is like in flux. So we do a planning matter. I think you're watching a planning matter, Scott. Was it a planning matter or council?
It was council 2 weeks ago, right?
So we did a planning matter on Friday. We have one tonight and one tomorrow night.
Yeah.
If they close down the state of emergency, then we can't even do the Planning Act matters. So, and for Planning Act matters, we have to give 20 days notice. So if the state of emergency, I think, was just extended to June 2nd, if we have to move a planning matter to June 3rd and they don't extend the state of emergency, we might not be able to have that Planning Matter Act brought forward. So you've got to remember there's a lot of moving pieces even for us in this pandemic.
Juggling lots of stuff. I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, Paul, in every leadership role, there comes a defining moment. And I think for a lot of leaders, this is a real defining moment. Tell me what you're learning. You've been great in coming out on an ongoing basis and keeping everybody informed and trying to keep people's spirits up. And here's where we're going. But I'd really like to know from your perspective what you're learning. And the reason I asked the question is, if I could go back, and I used to be, when I was on the radio, when 9/11 happened, I was there sitting in that chair when it took place. The television was in the studio. And if I can go back, there's a couple of things I definitely would have done very differently. I'm not saying to look up any regrets or anything that you have, but what are you learning? This is a real test, a leadership test, and what you're learning, how you're doing it. And there is no manual for it. So you're figuring it out as you go, right?
You're learning lots. You're learning how people react. You can see how stressed people are. If there was one thing that I could change, Scott, would probably be you and I shouldn't have been at PDAC. To be honest, because there was 23,000 people from around the world, and you and I were in the middle of that, talking to everyone that there was there coming into the pavilion, and then coming back and hearing 7 days later someone in that pavilion tested positive. I don't think we ever talked to that individual. I didn't know him, but then I had to go self-isolate for the final 8 days it might be. no regrets. I think we did everything that we needed to do as quickly as we did. I was talking to Dr. Jericho. He said if we would have waited 3 days, we probably would have seen 3 times as many positive cases because it could have spread that quickly. So we probably bang on because we're a little bit behind Toronto. That's in our favor. That's not to our credit. It's probably in our favor. But Scott, I think specifically, I remember walking into the CEO's office and saying, David, we have to close City Hall. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he says, how do you close down City Hall? And I said, we have no choice. And so you can imagine those conversations. And then the very next day, by the way, we have to send people home. We have to send people home. And so this is a group decision. We're all in it. We're all going through the pros and cons. But I think everybody reacted extremely well. As soon as we started closing city halls, other city halls started to close because everybody doesn't want to be the first. And I'm not trying to pat us on the back. We were just out there. We worked closely with our medical officer of health. So we were making decisions. I would say that the most difficult part was just when we thought we had everything down perfect, within 3 hours, it was upside down again. So you're constantly changing things, moving things forward, pulling things back, making things happen, slowing things down. Up till about, I would say 2 weeks ago, now it kind of seems like we can catch our breath and start to plan. But you can imagine, physical distance. What started as social distancing became physical distancing. Then the message became you had to stay home. You were watching what was happening in the businesses. You were seeing what the Prime Minister was saying. We were hearing what our Premier was saying. I didn't really hear too many of the other premiers. But we were trying to take a leadership role from a city perspective. So I have no regrets. I think we've done everything right. Our community really responded. So in my messaging, I was, they'd say, can I go out for a walk? And I'd have to say, listen, you need to stay home. But if you have to go for a walk, it's your sole responsibility to make sure you self-distance, good hygiene, don't gather. You can imagine I've said that a million times, and people are still saying, do we still have to physical distance, Mr. Mayor? So that message is clear, and you guys are in communication, so you'd understand that. But by and large, I remember Ian Kilgore. I don't mind telling the story. I don't know how much time we have, Paul and Scott.
It's all good. It's all good.
Gord Young. So there's only 5 of us allowed on our floor, or the city clerk comes. The lawyers work from home. So and our understanding is when we leave work, we have to go directly home. We cannot go out. We can't be around people because we have to keep everybody, the senior team, safe. But I remember it was like 4:30 on a long day, and Gord Young, Ian Kilgore, Dave Euler, and I were standing out, and you know what our vestibule is like out in front by where Adriana and Linda sit. And we're all 6-8 feet apart. And I looked over at Ian, and Ian says, oh, I'm tired. This has been a long week. It was a Friday. And I said, Ian, tell me honestly, would you rather be any other place but right here, right now? And he looked at me and smiled. He said, no, I'd rather be here right now. This is like incredibly challenging, but rewarding at the same time. It was one of those moments where we all recognize that, we should be proud of what everyone's doing, not just us, but everyone. And just to be one of the players in the whole big team of making the decisions, I think that's something we can be proud of. And that's why we say we need to have confidence in the president and CEO of the hospital, our fire chief, our police chief, the mayor and council, our city staff, our business leaders, our community leaders. We need to have confidence that they are doing the right things and communicating the right message. Sorry for the long-winded story.
No, it was great.
It was awesome. All said. Mayor Al, Scott, listen, guys, thank you so much for coming on today. I greatly appreciate it. I told you it would happen. I told you.
Hang on. It's my...
Al, thank you for all your posts on Facebook, keeping everybody up to date. That's excellent. I follow it. It's great to see. So, again, I really appreciate you for coming on and all you're doing. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you, Paul and Scott. I mean, I see you all over social media all the time, Paul, doing everything that you're doing for business. And I always love when you say grind it out. And I was waiting for that. What city staff doing to grind it out? Because I just love that perspective, because that's what it is, right? You're just trying to find ways to make things happen. But please know our business community really needs a public voice of, hey, let's support local business. You're doing everything you can to get that message out, and I just can tell you it's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much. We're having a great time doing it. And I really appreciate Scott giving me the opportunity to stay out there with them, because they do need all the attention and all the eyeballs they can possibly get, and anything we can do to shed a little bit of light on them, it's kind of what I like to do. So again, thank you so much for coming on this. I appreciate it. Scott, you're awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
You have a better one.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.